In this video, I'll go through the tracks of my newly released EP called Waiting Spaces. I'll show you track by track why I made these sounds and how I made these sounds and what I was thinking while creating the EP and how it is in response to my previous EP. If you like my music, this could be interesting for you. If you don't like my music, this can also be interesting for you, as you can maybe gain some different tools or different ideas for your own music. Now I'll switch to screen capture and we'll go into the EP. So the first thing I can tell you about how I work on an EP or an album is that I work on the whole musical work in one project. And so you'll have all the songs in the same file. This allows me to better see and work on transitions, to work on different parts of different songs at the same time, and helps me see the overall pacing of the music. So for this EP, I wanted something more ambient, something that doesn't take up too much attention, but still is interesting enough to intrigue the ear. And so the sounds are more mellow, it's more repetitive, and the variation is often that sounds move around your head and present themselves to you in a different way than what you've heard it before. This is in response to the last EP I've done. And the last one, what I had done is some sort of sound installation. I had made a binaural microphone head, placed it in the center of my room, put 6 speakers around it, and reamped sounds in the speaker to make them move around the mic. And so this created some kind of moving space with which I created the textures that were used in the EP. And on top of this, I added drums to a click that are just piercing through the textures, and then I added some other synth textures on top of this. When I mixed that EP, I made it very big in terms of a soundscape, but the drums are dead center and in your face. And so for this new EP, I was thinking that it would make more sense if the drums were part of the soundscape. So instead of having a 3D space with the drums in your face, to see the drums as something that I can put in the background with the rest of the music. And so for most of the pieces, I imagined some sort of container that I can look from above and place the sounds in it at different places and have the listener's focus shift in different corners of the room. And the drums are part of that space. And so they're more in the background, more ambient, and more felt than heard. And so for this first piece, I started with a sound made by Platts on chord mode, and it's oscillating between 2 chords. I wanted some kind of breathing motion. And something else I need to say is when I record tracks, I will often record them several different ways at the same time as I'm tracking it, or I'll reamp them through different amps or speakers. And then I get all the tracks and I automate the gain or volume between them to make them merge in and out of each other. And then I'll freeze that track or bounce it and make it one. Throughout my creation process, I freeze and bounce tracks often because I want to lock in the options so that I can't go back and change something. So that I'm always thinking forward and not trying to fix stuff that I've done in the past. So this track, which is made with Platts, is I think 4 tracks of Platts recorded different ways. And so you'll hear it move around your head, breathe in and out of itself, and it makes some kind of very big and dense drone-like sound like this. So I don't know if you can hear, but it's moving a bit around your head. And so since this was such a big sound taking the whole place, I decided to add something that was more sparse and moving around the ears. And so I used a woggle bug with scan and pan and a rample to modulate different gain, panning, and some effects on the sound, which I think was a piano sample. And so this is it. And there's another variation of itself here. And so these two together added some movement to the more static sound of Platts. Now with Platts. At the time I was doing this, I had just started making some steel cymbals, and so I had this 48-inch cymbal gong, and I made a roll on it for the whole length of the song, so about 10 minutes, with some swells. This was to kind of add some water underneath the sounds or another breathing motion, like this. And so I wanted this EP, contrary to the last one, to be based around acoustic instruments. And so I had a piano at the time, and I recorded some piano notes into some delay made with the Echo Boy from Santoys. And as I said, I like to reamp my sounds. So I use a few sounds that I manipulate differently. And so this one I reamped through a small Leslie type amp I have. It's a shoebox with a small motor and speaker with an ice cream container that turns around with holes in it so the sound comes out at different speeds. And this amp has a lot of distortion. It has some rattle from the container hitting the sides, and I like it very much to reamp. And so this is the sound. Here it is with the other piano. And when I'm doing these sounds, after I freeze the tracks and I start mixing, I use the Dear VR Pro plugin, which is a binaural simulation to place the sounds in 3D around the listener's head. And so, for instance, this sound, which was the reamped delayed piano, is placed behind your head to the right. And so this helps me create a big ambience by placing the sounds at specific places around your head. So after doing all this, I thought I had nice movement and like a calming breathing sensation. And I was thinking that I needed some type of melody on top. And so I recorded some piano notes, but I felt like it was getting in the way of the delayed piano. So I cut off the attack of each note or chord and put a small fade in, which gave me this sound. Oh, wait, I'll remove all the plugins. Oh, and on this, there's also Pan Man from Soundtoys. There's a tremolator cutting the sound in and out. And the cutting was very sharp, and so there was a small glitch. And I like this glitch, so I added the little plate for it to add a bit of space and make the glitch more natural. And so this is the sound. And since I thought this was maybe too distracting in the other textures, I added some reverb. And then I added my favorite plugin, which is the pusher. It adds some dirt to the sound. I often use it instead of reamping. It's some kind of weird distortion, a bit electric sounding. It's very subtle. And then I placed it in back of the head, and DVR reduces the volume a lot, so I put a compressor, which is the AR1 from Kush Audio, which is my favorite compressor. It adds some noise to the sound also. And I used an MS EQ to center the lows. So it's a subtle melody, it's very far and back, but it adds some kind of movement just to interest the ear since the sound is very repetitive. And for the drums, I didn't want something too in your face, and so it's very in the background. I put small percussions on my floor tom and on my cymbals, and I'm not really playing them, I'm just moving it around so they rattle against each other to add a bit of noise. And I took the tempo from the next song and played it on the kick throughout the song so that it could be used as a transition. And I played it to a click, but purposefully playing loosely around the click so that it doesn't feel too mechanical. And this was my transition to the next song. And I also added a few chords of piano at the end. Now for piece number 2, which was transition from number 1 with the drums like this. The track was based around an arpeggiator from the OP1 with the FM synth. And so the FM synth with a short attack has a very nice tick sound, like and so I boost this frequency to make it more pronounced, and it makes me think of a clock. And so the first one was more mellow breathing, and this one is more about like being stuck in time, or being stuck in one place while time moves around you. And so this is the arpeggiator. I added another track with plats in chord mode again, kind of like the sound of a train, and it moves across your ears throughout the arpeggiation, like this. All the automations I do on Dear VR, I will usually do by recording it and doing it manually while I'm listening. If the song is 10 minutes, I'll listen to it for each track 10 minutes at a time and move the instrument around your head. And so it's very precise to what I'm hearing and feeling while doing it. So after doing these tracks, I had just gotten Scan and Pan. And Scan and Pan with the gain to the maximum has a very nice and aggressive overdrive. And so this is plats into Scan and Pan with maximum gain. And the sound was too aggressive for this track, and so I dulled down the high end a lot, and it gave this sound. And there's also, I think, a plate reverb on it, but it's frozen in the track, and I made it move around with DVR. I had done this other track with piano because this EP was supposed to be based around piano sounds. And so I had played notes, but I felt it was too similar to the first track, which also had just simply played notes. And so I double clicked the track, went into warp mode here, and selected texture, put the grain size down and mess with the flux, and you'll get some sort of glitch. And this glitch gave this type of sound. And what I liked about this sound was that it made me feel as if the piano was fighting against itself to pass through what it had to say. And so this fit into the being stuck in time or time going in circles with the faraway trains moving across your ears. And I like this track a lot, and so I put it into a portable speaker, which is this one. And I swung it across two microphones. So it moves from your ear, right ear to left ear like this. And I slowed that track down with the glitches. It gave this sound. But I felt that was too much movement for the piece, which was already very intense from the plats in Scan and Pan. And so I added the DearVR plugin and placed it in front to the left. So instead of having this sort of movement, you get this sort of movement, and it's less distracting from the other sounds. So this is the result. I'll show before and after. And so with these two piano tracks here, I liked it very much, but it was in competition with the aggressiveness of plats in Scan and Pan. And so what I did is I took DearVR plugin to each and I put them in opposite. And so they're always moving against each other in space. And at the beginning, it will be the plats and Scan and Pan in your face, and gradually will move to the left and the piano will present itself as if you were shifting your focus or your head in a room filled with sound. And so they're always in opposite, as you can hear in this example. Until the piano takes up the whole place in front. And Scan and Pan is in the back. And so that's pretty much it for this track. I added some, I think, piano and dictaphone. And that's it for this track. No drums. I didn't feel like it. And also, maybe one last thing. Sometimes I'll record a track and have it kind of dry like this. Well, I placed it in back after, but I'll also put a very distant one. And then have a blend of both. Like for endings, I like the sound to go away. So this sound I made with, I think, the OP1 into tape cassette, pitched down and slowed down. And I made various versions of different speeds to have something more full. So there's like the very high pitch and a lower pitch like this. And so these are exactly the same tracks, but at different speed and so different octaves. And I have a third variation of the same track here into a lot of reverb. This was the piece I had the most difficulty with in the EP because it felt very static. I felt stuck, and the drums I had recorded on it initially were very big and resonant. And so that's when I started thinking about treating the drums as I do with the synths. I took my big resonant drums and instead of having them very wide and in your face, I put it very small into one small point, and I put the pusher plugin to the something is broken setting. And this setting sounded like electricity on every tom hit. I'll show you here. And so I had cut off all the low end, kept maybe I think the middle mic that I put at the center of my kit, and it sounded like electricity, and I put it into a steel plate reverb to add distance. And after this, I put it in your VR. It moves around a bit, but it's in front of you, close to your face. Yeah, eye level. And this felt more suitable in the textures I had, which were these. And I had also removed all the fills. That's why there's this many cuts. It's because I removed any variation. I just wanted it to go kick, snare, kick, tom. And I still felt stuck with this track, and I was gone away from my studio space and from my apartment. But I had brought with me my Zoom and I had some glasses. And so I tuned different glasses with water in them to the pitch of the song and played long textures. And this I then stacked and pitched down and added my favorite reverb with the space modulator from Valhalla with the preset echo space of Odin. And it gave this type of sound. And then this took up the whole place of the song, and I started building back around this sound. And it felt like wind. And so the staticness now made sense because stuck in a point with the drums being repetitive and this kind of wind going around you. And then, since this is supposed to be based around piano, eventually some chords come in with some delay. And I think I had edited notes out that I didn't like, so that's why there's hard cuts, which made it also interesting in the delay. One more thing, I also had cut off the attack and put a fade in so the chords bleed into the sound without having the attack of the piano, so it sounds familiar but you're not sure. And then I was pretty happy with the result. was just normal chords also. See, like this is an example that I must have done something I didn't like, so I just cut it out. And I like the result. I just fade out on this note here, and it fades into the next one. And in context. Okay, so that's it for this part. For the last piece, I wasn't sure how to start it and how to end the EP. And so I decided to do a similar sound as the first piece. So it would be coherent. So it's flats on chord mode oscillating through different chords. But I decided to pass it on cassette tape and put it in a tape loop. So this is what happened. I liked the fragility of it and the hiss, even though I usually remove the hiss with the Isotope RX7 plugin. But for this one, I left it in, or maybe I reduced it a bit. But I liked it so much that I just recorded hiss on one of the tracks, like this. And so those two together, now I have control between the hiss and the track with hiss. And so to continue the track, I pitched down even further the tape and made this bass sound on a tape loop. And I tried to keep in all the spots where there was some type of glitch, or well, not a glitch, but like tape speed artifacts by pulling on the tape, or when the motor gets stuck. I had made this other tape loop that felt like somebody whistling, and I thought this felt like some type of piece or like something more joyful for the ending. And so I edited out a lot of the notes but kept the little whistle. I didn't want it to be too present, so I put it in your VR and it's moving around your head while the other two tracks are taking most of the space, like this. And now you just heard this track come in, which is made with the Yamaha PS20. It sounds a bit like a Farfisa and has an integrated speaker, which I like a lot. And it's going through a crystallizer plugin by Soundtoys. And this is very static throughout the piece. It's very static, but it has a small movement like this. And there's also some automation on the volume. And just to show you how I do my automations, I don't use like the A and button and put in values. I usually will just cut a section, double click, and mess with the independent volume like this and make a fade in. I prefer this way to do it. It's more visual for me and it's easier to freeze afterwards. And so after doing these tracks, which are very static, I wanted to add drums. And I wanted drums similar to the drums of my last EP and the last piece. So on the last EP, it's a bunch of melodies, the same melody in different speeds with the drums going through it, like this. But for this one, I tried doing this in the same kind of way for this track, and I didn't feel good about it. It felt too present, too in your face, too much space, taking too much attention. And so I decided to think of it like the tape and pitch it down. I pitched it down with the Alter Boy plugin by Soundtoys and gave this result. And so this I felt was more coherent because it feels like something breathing, like a horse or some type of motor going back and forth, or some machine. And just to give it a bit more presence and movement, I doubled the track, put a high pass filter, and took those small frequencies and I'm moving it around your head. And so this gives some type of pulse or moving forward movement while all the rest is being static, like this. Which brings us to the piano track, which comes in at the end, because this was supposed to be a EP based around the piano. And so I played some melodies and added some delay. And I think the notes I didn't like, I just cut out. And so it made a hard cut, which makes it also interesting in the delay. So you can hear this now. And this gradually becomes a melody, which is this one. The dee da dee da da, which is a melody I borrowed from the other EP. So it's one piece, makes sense, the songs are responding to each other, and some melodies are borrowed from other pieces, like this. And it's the same melody from this song. And so this piano track I doubled and I put into some reverb and DVR again. And I did this because I wanted the ending to be a bit smoother. And so as the piano is fading out, its tail will fade out after. For me, it made more sense like this instead of, because I felt weird by the piano that's in front of you fading out in your face. I prefer it to fade out in a distance. And I didn't like having simply the song fade out like this, so I was trying to find some place where I had the chords so I could isolate it and finish on a chord. But I was unable. I tried cutting different parts. I tried cutting the high frequencies to isolate the chord. I was unable to make it nice, and so I rushed back to a piano and recorded simply the chords. And so the piano fades out and a chord is left. It feels like a more peaceful ending, or like there's a question at the end or a message instead of having it just fade out. And since I had isolated the hiss, I was able to leave it at the end without having the tape loop. So this is the hiss and the piano, which I liked. Hiss. and the piano. And so this is how the EP ends, in a more peaceful way. So it's a lot of staticness, breathing, time, and ends on a message. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was interesting for you and that you were able to maybe learn something or at least understand what I'm thinking while creating this music. This EP, Waiting Spaces, is now available on all streaming platforms and on Bandcamp. And with every EP I release, I put out a sample pack of the sounds that I used that is available on my Patreon. Thank you for watching, and that's it.